Today, we will be discussing the results of the California recall election and possible vaccination mandates for air travel.
Followed by Donald Trump and his plan to rerun for president in 2024.
And finally, local news regarding the Nixon Library 9/11 tribute and controversy around Downtown Fullerton and a recent sexual assault. We're committed to bringing you the news, views, and info to go on this episode of The Report, Roundtable Discussion. I'm Chris Adler.
I'm Amanda Mendoza.
And I'm Jorge Flores. As you can see, we are practicing safety during the pandemic and wearing our masks so that we can gather for today's episode of The Report. Follow us on Twitter at The Report CSUF or on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and view our new content.
Governor Gavin Newsom survived the California recall election last Tuesday. Voting ended with a 63.9% vote in Newsom's favor, an automatic win for the governor. Much of Northern and Central California voted yes on the recall, but other counties with high populations, such as Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego, Monterey, Santa Clara, Sacramento, and even Yolo County, where the recall began, helped Newsom to stay in office. If Newsom had been recalled, Republican candidate Larry Elder would have taken his place. Elder swept every county in California with majority vote. According to the New York Times, even with such a sweep, there will be no change to California government, at least until the 2022 midterm elections next November. So I like to ask you guys, so I mentioned that last week that I pretty much expected Newsom to win because California is majority blue, majority Democratic. So as I mentioned, 63.8% of voters said no on the recall, while 36.2% said yes. And so I'm really proud of California just coming together, voting no on this recall, and having Governor Newsom stay where he is in his position. So interestingly enough, according to Bloomberg, Newsom would need more than 50% of the vote to keep his position. And as I mentioned, conservative host Larry Elder earned 46.9% of the vote for those who claimed that they want to vote yes on the recall. So I want to ask you guys, what are the impacts of Newsom's win, and what are some of the repercussions?
Well, I think it's interesting. In the beginning of the pandemic, it seemed that California as a whole, including Democrats and Republicans, were ready to recall Newsom. I think that because he doubled down and he didn't change his policies and his views, I think that because of that, and people seeing the uptick in the COVID cases and how severe it was, initially I think it was like a scare and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we don't have any control, we can't do anything anymore. But because he doubled down and he stayed and he continued to keep the policies, I think Californians realized that, okay, this is going to be, we need to keep this man in office. And also, like I said last episode, the last time that we had a Republican in office was right after the Gray Davis election when we elected Arnold Schwarzenegger. But the issue with California is that that's really the only way Republicans can get into the governor position in California is if there is a recall, because they don't need that much a percentage of vote to actually get in. It was a power grab move. Larry Elder, it was a complete power grab move, and they thought that they might have a chance. But as far as repercussions, I think that I don't know, Jorge. What do you think that Governor Gavin Newsom is going to do now? Do you think that he's going to change his policies in any way for the Democrats who were upset with him?
Crystal, that's a really interesting question. First of all, because I will focus my point in Gavin Newsom and his future. Like you mentioned, he was very consistent after his mistake on that dinner. So having someone who is very serious in politics makes you trust him a little bit more. I mean, we all make mistakes, and he did, and he accepted it. So I think that was very important for him not to get recalled. Now, some of the experts, like the UC Berkeley professor in political science, Jack Sidran, said, with this win of Gavin Newsom not being recalled, probably the probabilities for him to be reelected as governor in 2022 here in California, they're increasing. Furthermore, it can clear the pathway for him to become a presidential candidate for the United States in 2024. So that really surprises me that maybe he's taking more national stage. And at least I believe for the citizens here in California, that will benefit us. Now let's get into some important COVID-19 related news and updates this week, specifically regarding air travel. Qantas Air becomes the first airline to require proof of vaccination for international passengers. The Australian airline will begin enforcing this requirement in December, when they resume international travel, after suspending flights for the safety of crew and passengers. Air Canada will soon be the next airline to turn away unvaccinated guests after the Canadian government announced that all commercial flight passengers must be vaccinated by the end of October. Most airlines currently only require pilots and attendants to be vaccinated per Biden's recent workplace mandates. His mandate directed the Labor Department to require all healthcare workers, federal employees, and companies with 100 or more employees to be vaccinated. Guys, another controversial topic. So many people might think that there's going to be those protesters trying to ask for their freedom. I mean, some people, they don't want to get vaccinated, and they're going to ask, why do I need to be vaccinated, and show proof of it if I want to travel? In my opinion, I respect that. However, I think that if we're thinking about protecting our society, we should be thinking about really taking these policies into consideration. And probably American Airlines can also be part of these first actions towards protecting our people. So what do you think, Amanda?
I completely agree. I think Qantas is actually taking the right step. Because first of all, they want to protect their workers, they want to protect their passengers, and of course they want to make a name for themselves, showing that they're a safe, responsible airline, right? And what's interestingly enough is that I think there's always going to be protests here. No matter what, if you have a rule, there are going to be protests in response to that rule. And interestingly enough, according to the new press release in August, the number of U.S. adults that say they have gotten or intend to receive the vaccine is 79%, while 19% say that they don't intend to. And if you compare this to July, that percentage was 24%. So I think recently with the Delta variant, people are more willing to go and take the vaccine as a precaution. So what are your thoughts, Crystal?
Well, I think this goes back to the vaccine mandate itself, even without the air travel. Before it was, the Pfizer was FDA approved. There were so many people saying, no, it's not FDA approved. We're not going to get it done. It's not FDA approved. Then it got FDA approved, and then conservatives, and not just conservatives, but largely conservatives, but others were saying, okay, well, high fructose corn syrup is FDA approved, and it's still not good for you. So it just seems, and I understand, and I think that it should be your body, your choice. You make that decision. Do I think that everybody should be vaccinated? Yes. But would I impose that on everybody? No. As far as the airlines go, these are commercial airlines. They can make these policies. Air travel is one of the biggest reasons why people get sick. You're enclosed in a tiny space, even with masks on, there's going to be germs spread. You can't escape it, it just happens. I mean, we're talking about people from all different areas of the world coming together, getting on an airplane together. I think that it is a great idea, but to tell somebody that you can't travel if you're not vaccinated, I think that's getting a little extreme. Because of the right it should be your right, your choice as far as being vaccinated, but it is a thin line. And I mean, if having an airline with all those people on it, I think that it is good policy, but it's like, where do you draw that line? Do you force people to get this vaccine in order to do it? So I think it's difficult to really say.
Although I disagree, that's a really interesting take, Crystal. Regardless, let's hope that these mandates are for the right and safe reasons. Now let's head on over to some news at the White House. News sites and politicians are speculating that former President Donald Trump may be rerunning for president in the 2024 election. Being banned from posting on social media, Trump has been hosting rallies around the country to stay connected to his supporters. It is said that at these rallies, he claims the 2020 election was stolen from him and he was the true winner of the race. Trump is set to host a rally on October 9th in Des Moines, Iowa, at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. The former president frequently visited Iowa toward the end of the last election, a state he won over in both 2016 and 2020. His choice to rally here caused the people to believe that he will soon be announcing his choice to run again in 2024. It was reported that Trump has raised over $100 million since the start of this year, a record-breaking amount for any former president. This money could be used in the midterm elections next year with the goal to turn the Senate red, or it could be stockpiled for a future election of his own. He also recently ran an advertisement accusing President Joe Biden of failure after pulling troops from Afghanistan. Trump may be trying to make a point for himself, an argument he could use in a future campaign. We will see if he makes any statements about his election plan after the rally in October. So this is a very very intriguing piece of news that I have a lot of opinions on. So I would actually argue the Republican Party is still very supportive of him. He has a large base. I even know some Republicans who say they totally vote for Trump if he wants to be up for re-election again in 2024. But I think the biggest point I'd like to make is that he can't really rely on social media as much. So for example, he can't use Twitter or Snapchat because they permanently banned him, and he's temporarily banned from Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And he's known for saying insults, for speaking about his point of view on these platforms. So I'd like to ask you, now that he doesn't have social media as a crutch, do you believe that he will have a successful campaign in 2024?
I think Donald Trump will find a way, regardless of being banned from Twitter or not. He will find a way. And actually, his social media was a huge outlet for him to get his rhetoric out there. But his rallies are too. So people will be at the rallies. And I think that Donald Trump could have a fair chance at of being reelected. Do I think it will happen? No, I don't think it'll be a landslide if another candidate wins. I don't think it will be a landslide, but I think that he could come very close.
Totally. And I really agree with you both. First of all, I do believe that Donald Trump, he's clever. He's really clever on picking a side where he already won a couple of times ago. I think that's kind of a respect to as a candidate, because he's already campaigning before even heading, ahead on 2024. So I really respect that. However, do I think that he's going to be officially the next candidate for the Republican Party? I have my doubts. We have other politicians as well that they are trying to follow his steps, like Ted Cruz. He's also trying to campaign already somehow. He's a little radical as well, but probably he could gain more and more political power as we are getting closer to 2024. So I think it's going to be a very interesting race, because up to this moment, I don't see anyone else than Donald Trump running for the candidacy in the Republican Party. So let's see how competitive this goes.
It will be interesting to see, though, with President Biden doesn't really have a lot of favorable numbers right now, especially with what happened after Afghanistan. I think that Trump will curtail that and use that and say, well, look at what Biden did. You don't want another 4 years of that. And he was already on a news station saying, that you leave with honor, you get out, but you get out with dignity. So he was saying, yes, he was for the pullout, but you don't do it in the way you did. And he was basically saying that Biden left 13 American troops dead in Afghanistan because of it. So I think that that's something he will use as leverage.
Exactly. And Crystal, I'll add to that Biden already mentioned since the beginning of his presidency that he's not going to go for re-election. So it's just a one term of 4 years and that's it. So it's going to make it really interesting to see what happens next. Now, ladies, if I may, let's just take a step back from politics and elections and take a second to honor and remember the victims and families that were greatly affected by September 11 attacks. Now, as we all know, the 20th anniversary of that day just passed not too long ago. On Saturday, September the 11th, the Richard Nixon Library in Yorba Linda hosted a very special event to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the September 11 attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. The Presidential Library hosted 23 tons of steel pulled from the wreckage of the World Trade Center, brought in motorcade with 3 helicopters hovering above. Just pieces from the towers that they were once pressed against the New York skyline. Tom Frost, an Orange County resident who lost his 22-year-old daughter in the attack, spoke at the event saying, "She was a passenger aboard a U.S. Flight 175 that was the second plane that was flown into the World Trade Towers, or the South Tower. Visitors touched the giant pieces of steel, a sobering reminder of devastation that 20 years ago happened. 2,997 flags were placed outside of the library in memory of those we lost after the terrorist attacks on that unsuspecting Tuesday morning. The steel remnants will be on display for visitors until September the 17th. Wow. Well, now that we changed the mood, it's important for us as Americans to understand that this changed completely the history of our nation. And I want to ask you, first of all, if you got any experience during that day, but also, do you think that our country is changing the way we view terrorism and national security in general? So, Crystal, what do you think about this?
Well, it's interesting. I'm a little bit older. I was 15 when the 9/11 attacks happened, and I remember it vividly. It was horrifying. I remember watching people jump out of the buildings, and for me, that was the image that sticks in my mind the most. With the Nixon Library hosting these actual steel parts of the remnants of the World Trade Center, I think that's for the first time people here can actually see, who have never seen, who were too young or never visited the World Trade Center, they'll actually get an up close and personal sight of what it looked like. And to actually have to see a part of that is pretty remarkable. 20 years later, we are pulling our troops out of Afghanistan. So this entire time, we have been living the 9/11 effects. We've been in Afghanistan. We just got out. So I think that it's not terrorism. It changed us. It changed us. But the unity that we saw on September 12th, the day after, was unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I think that for a brief moment, on September, the 20th anniversary that just passed, Americans were able to stop bickering and remember what happened that day, and remember what makes us Americans. I don't know if that's going to last, because we've been so divided. The parties, the bipartisans, have been so divided with the different policies between COVID and the vaccine and everything. But it's important to remember that terrorism is still real. We're out of Afghanistan, but there are people out there that still want to hurt us, and I think that we can never lose sight of that.
I agree, Crystal. What happened was absolutely tragic. I was actually only a few months old when this occurred. However, my parents say that they will never forget that day. They will never forget hearing what happened on the news and hearing about all the innocent lives lost. And unfortunately, I think fighting terrorism is going to be an ongoing battle. I don't think it will ever be eliminated. But what we can do here at home is ensure that we appreciate our loved ones, that we appreciate where we live, that we appreciate our country, and that hopefully we come together in times of need.
That was a very memorable day, and I will personally never forget it as a high schooler. I think that no matter what, it's important that we should always remember those we lost on that day and honor those that sacrificed their lives for others. Whether it was the fire department, police officers, paramedics, civilians, etc., they will simply never be forgotten in our hearts, and we appreciate the touching tribute they presented. From one sensitive topic to another, let's now move on to a recent sexual assault case over at Downtown Fullerton. On August 1st, Samantha Velasquez, a 22-year-old college student, went out for drinks and dancing with a friend at a bar and grill, JP23 in Downtown Fullerton. A new resident to Fullerton, she had only been to Downtown Fullerton one other time. Samantha said after a crowd gathered inside the bar, two girls she had never met offered her drinks they said someone else bought for them. Samantha took the drinks, not thinking anything of it, and that was the last thing she remembers before waking up alone in a parking structure near the bar. Her leggings torn, her bodysuit stretched as if it had been violently yanked, and her cell phone and other personal belongings missing. Samantha says she only had 3 drinks before the night became a blur. Once she came to, she walked home to her nearby apartment, and it wasn't until she had to use the bathroom that she realized she was bruised and sore. Her mother urged her to file a police report and have a rape kit performed, where it was confirmed that she had blunt force trauma in her genital areas. She was raped. Since coming forward with her story on multiple news outlets, several women have reached out to Samantha and myself, claiming similar stories, saying they went to JP23 or other downtown Fullerton bars. They danced, they drank, they blacked out. Protests erupted outside of JP23 since Samantha's story went viral, many demanding the bar be shut down, claiming it is a breeding ground for date rape. JP23 owner Jacob Puzikala released a statement saying that he's fully cooperating with the Fullerton Police Department, providing them with video footage of that night, and that he stands by rape victims. I sat down with Samantha where she shared her story with the report.
Did you ever speak to the owner, Jacob?
of JP23, have you spoken with him at all since this happened?
No, I haven't.
Has he reached out to you at all, personally?
No. There was a time at the city council meeting, I did try to look him in the eye. Like I wanted him to notice me, but he just kept his eyes down. And he had an opportunity to tell me, hey, look, I'm sorry. I had no involvement in this. JP23 had no involvement whatsoever. And we stand by you, but that didn't happen. And for him to, have his employees harass me, have employees harass the protesters that,
So devastating to say the least. As a woman going out to downtown Fullerton, I have had my own experiences with just unsavory characters. Now with Samantha, here I asked her, what did you think the moment when you found out that you were raped? What was the first thought in your mind? And she said, devastation, absolute devastating. Now, there have been protests outside of JP23 since this happened. Every other weekend, protesters are going at prime time to keep patrons out of the bar. I spoke with the owner, Jacob Puzakala, who said his revenue is down 80%. He's upset. He thinks this is a smear campaign. He's denying any kind of involvement. I asked him, I said, hey, the public wants accountability. Where do you stand on this? And he said that he doesn't have anything to do with it. He stands by rape victims, but hasn't really taken any policies and put any policies in place since this happened. Now, for somebody like Samantha to go through something like this, as a mother and a woman, my first hope would be that the owner would have reached out to me personally. But as Samantha said in the city council meeting, he couldn't even look her in the eye. So what do you guys have to say about that?
Wow, I have a lot today. First of all, my heart goes out to Samantha Velasquez. What happened was absolutely horrendous. Now, first of all, the thing is that with Jacob, at the very least, he could have acknowledged it. At the very least, he could have said, my heart goes out to you. Are you okay? Is there anything I could do for you, Samantha? Why is your first line of defense, this might be a smear campaign, this, that? Why aren't you going asking her if she needs to contact the police, or even asking other customers, do they feel safe when they are in your bar? That is the very least he could have done. So I'm confused about why he won't look her in the eye. Like, that's not taking accountability. And other bars have different measures to ensure that women are staying safe. They might have secret codes to where you can ask for a certain drink and someone escorts you to your car. They might have pH tests. So he could do more to protect his customers, but I don't see why he's trying to deflect, it seems like. What are your thoughts, Jorge?
Totally, Amanda. Now, this is not the first time this happens.
Correct. It is not the first time. About 7 women have reached out to me personally because they knew I was covering the story, and they told me that they have been raped in downtown Fullerton, drugged and raped. They don't recall anything from that night. One woman who I spoke with, who wants to remain anonymous, is pregnant. She doesn't know if it's from being raped and from that perpetrator. She doesn't know if it's his baby. So, it's really sad and disgusting that there are people out there that are doing this. They are preying on women. But I think where the outrage is that this isn't, Samantha's story is not the first story. There were posts on Yelp of people saying they've been sexually assaulted, that they had been date raped. My question is, as a bar owner, that would be the first thing. We know he's seeing these Yelp reviews. Why didn't he take any kind of action beforehand? And I'm not saying that Jacob himself is responsible, but this is happening in your establishment. Multiple women are claiming. So what are you doing to help this or prevent this from happening? And I think that that's really the big question there. Something else that I think is important to note, that I pulled up the court records for Jacob Puzakala. There are 20 complaints filed against him in the Orange County Superior Court. He's only a plaintiff in one case. And there are personal injury cases filed against him. There is where his bouncer beat somebody so badly that they caused a brain injury. His staff. Another staff member, a bartender, hopped over the bar and beat a woman for really no apparent reason, it seems. And so it seems like there is some kind of atmosphere, a climate that he's allowing, because there's a complaint, there are complaints filed against him. So this isn't an isolated incident regarding Jacob Puzikala. So we really have to say, hey, what's going on? And that's why I think it's important to tell this story, because we need to bring this out into the light.
And that's my point, Crystal. Yes, it's great that he was trying to help with the police department. I mean, that's great. That's normal. That's what it should be done since the first place. But he's not really cooperating for this to be stopped.
Yes.
In my opinion, as a student, we have the rights to have fun. We have the right also to be safe.
That's right.
And that's something that this is not happening right now. So in my perspective, JP23 needs to face the consequences of their acts, since being already more than 20 complaints already. It should be shut down. And maybe that could also be an example for other bars to start thinking about their safety policies towards their customers. And with that, that's all the time we have today on the Report Roundtable Discussion. Have a safe week, everyone, and stay tuned for more news, views, and info. I'm Jorge Flores.
And I'm Chris Adler.
And I'm Amanda Mendoza. As always, stay fresh, Fullerton.